You're right. My friends on the streets, especially when they've gone through different things than I've gone through, they want to teach my kids, they want to protect my kids. And they see like their innocence and their purity and they want to guard it, which is not what I expected. It sounds like
same thing.
Yes. And then they become my teacher and they become teachers of my children. There's this wealth there that you just are not expecting to stumble upon. Once you get it, it's like, I never want to not have this in my life or in my kids' lives.
Exactly. I agree.
April, I'm so glad to have you here today for our first Moms Change the World interview. And you have been a mom who has participated a lot in the work of the Human Impact. You've brought your kids along. We'll have to tell the story about when one of your other family members happened to show up there. But thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm honored that you asked me to come.
Well, I'd love to just start out by hearing a little bit of your story, if you don't mind, just a couple of minutes sharing with us kind of who you are, a little bit about your background, so that we better have a sense of your story.
Yeah. So I'm a mom, as I mentioned, and I have 3 children, and I grew up in Plano. I've lived there since I was 10. Went to school in Louisiana, and then graduated, started working, etc. I would say when my second child was born, Jordan, she's now 12, I started feeling kind of like, I just like started questioning, like, is this life just going to be like, is this what I'm going to do? Is just go in my career and try to advance in my career and take care of my kids and volunteer. I just started feeling like my life was a little bit devoted. And I started kind of questioning, like, hey, I want to do things for other people that has literally nothing to do with me, you know? And so started looking to this organization and volunteering with them. And I still volunteer with them now, but it's like basically an organization where they hold kids. It's called My Friend's House in Plano. You know them, right?
I haven't met them before.
Oh, yeah. So it's a really cool organization, but they basically hold kids in between foster. Like when they find them not obviously having a home, being home insecure, and they find them, then they give them a place to stay in between foster before they find their like official foster family. So like just bring food to them and everything like once a month. So I just like started like just doing something that just kind of like was like, okay, cool. Like I just felt, good that I was like pouring into something other than like myself. And then years later, through a baseball mom, we met with Human Impact, and we did like the street tour on a Thursday and just talked to everybody, that was the first time ever I think I had spoken to anyone who was home insecure or homeless. And were you going to say something?
Well, do you mind explaining a little bit, just for the other moms who maybe are afraid to jump into something like that, what you felt before, and then what your actual experience was like?
Yeah, before, doing the Human Impact, you mean?
Like, you hadn't gone out to the streets with your kids before.
Yeah.
So how did you feel?
Yeah.
And then how did what you were thinking it would be like match up with your experience, or was it different? Will you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I kind of went in with zero expectations. The baseball mom, just said, this is something that we've done. She said that we'll talk to, homeless people and we'll just kind of be there. So we came kind of open-minded. All 3 of my kids were there. And I had researched, though, a little bit, like Human Impact, and thought, oh, this is cool. And I had been looking for an opportunity because what I was doing before with my friend's house, my kids could not be involved in it. So I was looking for something that I could bring my kids along, because we spend so much time, as moms. It's like the more we can do things with our kids, it just makes it so much better, right? And so I did the event with Human Impact, and I think as we were going, I don't really know if I really just enjoyed it. I didn't know what to expect. I had never spoken to homeless people before in that way, like really trying to understand their stories and who they are and like what they were doing at Austin Shelters, where we were at the time, and what their plan was, etc. Like I had never spent that much time speaking to someone who was homeless, and either had my kids. At the time, I think it might have actually just been my son and my youngest daughter. My youngest daughter just kind of clung to me the whole time. But my son, who probably at the time was like 10, he went with another group and some of his baseball friends and started talking in another group with other people. And he's like a very sociable kid. So he kind of naturally started talking to people as well and didn't feel, in danger, or everyone felt like safe, right? And so when we came back, we went out with this guy, Brad, who's on your team, and then Edward. So we went out with them. And so when we came back, Edward spoke to the kids about just his life and his story and how he wound up, homeless, and what his life lessons were, et cetera. And it just really just touched my heart, touched my son's heart, like everybody who was there. Like even one of the baseball moms, when I see her, we still talk about Edward. We still talk about the human impact. So it just was a great experience. And from there, I was like, I want to do this more and more and more and more and more. So we started incorporating in my son's homeschooling routine and all of that. And he, like, just the lessons that he got from it were just like, and still whenever we come, like, he's like, obviously he's back in school, and so the schedule's a little bit difficult. But anytime he has a chance, he's like, I want to come. Like, when are you going? So it's been great.
And what ended up happening, I know you and Edward got to see each other more than just that experience on the streets. Will you tell us the story of what happened?
Yeah. I think it was just natural and organic. Edward then started coming to some of our baseball games with Brad. Brad and him came to, I think, maybe one or two of our baseball games. And we just connected, Edward felt like family to me, right? And so between him and my son, and they would throw the football around. And again, like, understanding his story, we just really connected. And I have Edward's number, and, like, I invited him for Thanksgiving, but I think he already had plans for Brad. But, that's somebody who I feel like is like family at this point. And I will always kind of like reach out to him and, like to hang out.
That's so beautiful. We have a verse that we say from Psalm 68:6 that God sets the lonely in families. And it's incredible to hear you use that word just naturally and organically, because I think we think it takes, 20 reps before you could feel that way about someone else. But I really do believe that God does that work. And so when we open our hearts up to having those kind of relationships, that God will actually connect us with other people.
Yeah.
And just the fact that, like, you met Edward the first time you came out, and that you had this connection, and you were brave and leaned in to continue to include him in your life, and that impacted his life significantly. It was so meaningful to him to come to those games. And it also sounds like it's still impactful in your life and the lives of the other families on the baseball team. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, every time I see Anna, who's the one who introduced me to the human impact, she's like, how's Edward? And, when I do come to events, I look for Edward and like to, catch up with them, see how everything's going. So I agree with you. It was just, sometimes you think you have to do so much. It just kind of happened naturally and organically.
I think it is so much more simple than we think. I talk a lot about how we almost put people who are homeless in a different category, and we lose our regular brains and how we converse with them. Mm-hmm. But as you learned, they're just people like us, which sounds so obvious. But for some reason we get intimidated and we don't realize it is just like, hey, how are you? Some people want to talk, some people don't, because they're humans. Yeah. Not because they're people living on the streets. Exactly. But not everyone's ready to engage. But if they are, sometimes people will share their whole life story with you. Yeah. And you'll end up crying together and praying together.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's amazing just to open your heart and then kind of let the conversation lead the way and experience them as a fellow human being, just like we are.
Yeah, I think having the kids there also opens the conversations too, because a lot of times they want to like impart wisdom that they have on the kids, which is nice, and so I can tell my son something, but when he hears it from someone else and they've lived life, a different life, it's going to connect a little bit differently, right? And so a lot of times they end up being like teachers to my kids and like the things that they say.
Oh man, that is like my favorite thing ever. And it's this nugget that people don't even have any idea happens, but you're right. My friends on the streets, especially when they've gone through different things than I've gone through, they want to teach my kids, they want to protect my kids, and they see like their innocence and their purity, and they want to guard it, which is not what I expected. It sounds like
same thing. Yeah.
Yes. And then they become my teacher, and they become teachers of my children. there's this wealth there that you just are not expecting to stumble upon.
Yeah.
Once you get it, it's like, I never want to not have this in my
Yes.
life or in my kids' lives.
Exactly. I agree.
How do you balance? So you're working
Yeah.
and you obviously have your kids and your family. How do you balance caring about other people and choosing to invest in other people's lives and also being a mom and having a career? How do you do all of that?
I feel like we were kind of just having the conversation that certain things that you do give you energy and fill you so you can continue to be a good mom and, like spend time in your career and everything like that. And so for me, like it's obviously tough just because logistically there's only so many hours in the day, right? But I think it's important, right, for our kids. It's important for me as a person. And so like whenever I can't do every single time, but I really try to make it intentional, because even when schedules don't feel like they don't allow, or like schedules are tight, it's like, okay, I need to carve this time out, because almost like, we always talk about me time, right? Like we need time for ourselves and things like that. But it's like, even though it's not me time, I think it's time that, in my personal opinion, fills me and my kids in ways that, the other things can't necessarily do. And so I feel as though it's important to do it. And it sounds like more selfish. Like sometimes I feel like I give back, like it is like more selfish because it like fills me and probably helps me more than like it helps the other people, right? But it's important to me. So I just make sure that we have the ability to do it. And I try to connect it to whatever I'm doing. So if it's work and I have the opportunity to plan a volunteer event, like I can do it through work. It's part of my job, right? And then with Human Impact, it's like if we have a day, like a Friday or a day that we can come, or Saturdays, mornings are great. So we just try to make it happen. But yeah, I think it feels more selfish than it is.
I agree with that. I think we underrepresent how good it feels and how much it gives back to us to go do these things. And a lot of fear holds us back. But when we step out of our comfort zones and we actually do it for the first time or the third time, we realize that actually was so good for me. And I personally believe that God built it that way because we are meant to go forth and serve, to go be in relationship with people who are different from us, who have different life stories. Yeah. And I think it's actually meant to feel good. And we should talk more about how good it feels. Yeah. And at least for me, my life can be built so insularly, where I'm just around a lot of people who are in the same socioeconomic status as me, and to step out of my comfort zone to go do these things, it's actually one of my favorite things in my entire life. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's always easy, but it is so fulfilling and meaningful. And it sounds like you feel much the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about a neat experience you had at a come to the table. You came to one of the Human Impact come to the tables, which is where we sit down and have a shared meal. And it's not us serving the homeless, but all of us eating together, families and singles and our friends on the streets and our friends who used to be on the streets. And we have a beautiful meal. Yeah. And this was designed after Jesus was just always eating with all different kinds of people. And we were like, well, we can do that. Mm-hmm. Tell me what happened at this event that was really surprising.
I love this event. Just let me just say that. It's just such a great idea that you came up with, because you really just sit and just break bread with people who you may not have ever broken bread with, and just get to learn their stories and share your stories, and not about what you do, or all of those things. So it's great. But so back to how integrating like my regular life with like volunteers. So I have a Girl Scout troop. And so I thought, well, this would be cool. We can bring the Girl Scout troop to the Coming to the Table event. So we came to the Coming to the Table event, and we had the Girl Scouts there, and we were all just kind of hanging out. And all of a sudden, my son came too. Not a Girl Scout, but came. And so he's like, Mom, Papa's here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, Papa's here. I saw him outside. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go out there, and I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, what are you doing here? Because my dad kind of moves on his own. I don't know what he does. He doesn't, you know what I mean? He just kind of does his own thing. I'm like, even when I lived there with him, it was like he'd be here and then he'd be gone. And we're like, he's out, So we're like, what are you doing? And he's like, I had already told my dad about the Human Impact and what a great organization it was, and the concept. Like, Dad, this is a really cool organization. At the time, he was helping out a lot with Bonton Farms. like, Dad, my dad also has like a heart to serve, right? And so I was just like, Dad, da, 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 da. And he's like, oh, that sounds cool. And then to see him there, it was so crazy. I was like, this is what I was telling you about. So his friend Ricky had kind of like talked to him about it as well and invited him to come to the the table event. So it was perfect. It's great. It's so actually really kind of cool to know that like my dad is involved in it and I am too. It just feels, but like separately, you know what I mean?
I know. I think that was your dad Stan's, maybe one of his first events.
Yeah,
maybe his first event
I
to
think
come
so.
to with
Yeah.
us. And then being like, that's April's dad? You have to be kidding me. Like,
That's
what are the
crazy.
chances?
What are the chances? That was insane. I was like, what are you? And I had talked to him about it, right? So I was like, what are you doing here? This is so weird. And so, like, now it's kind of cool. I mean, I wouldn't say, obviously, I'm a volunteer. I'm not, like, involved, but I consider myself, like, involved.
You are involved. Yeah, you're one of our favorites.
Okay,
we
good.
want you always.
Okay, good.
How has both the work you've done with that other organization and the work with the Human Impact, how has that shifted your perspective as a family?
Yeah. I think it just, like, I think for the kids, it opens their mind up to the idea that, they live in these worlds where it's all about them, and they have, like you said, kids at the same socioeconomic status as them, and like, right? And so it opens their minds up to the idea of the fact that everyone doesn't start with the same opportunities, and everyone isn't given the same opportunities throughout their life, right? And so, like, for my kids, it makes them super empathetic to other people, like, and so when we see homeless people, they're like, Mom, let's go talk to them, right? Like they're not afraid, and they have a heart to like want to help, and so that has been like one of the most amazing things to see that in them, because like that can't be taught. That has to be something that they're exposed to. But to your point, I think it's naturally in everyone, right? And so I think when you're exposed to it and you see it, that just gives them a different perspective.
I love that. It's, like you said, embedded in who they are as children, as people.
Exactly.
And we get to see that come alive in them because we're all designed, I think, to serve others and to give back. And to your point, to have our children understand that people live in a different way. And not just because I tell them, like, people have different experiences or you have a lot of opportunities, but because they're actually seeing people with different life stories who have, they take away so much more from those interactions than I could ever just tell them. They really get to see and experience it for themselves.
Yeah.
And then you've talked some about this, but do you have any other sort of reflections or closing thoughts for either how it's impacted you personally or how you might encourage other moms and other families to step out of their comfort zones to go towards a relational ministry that allows to be face-to-face with other people and hear their stories, a ministry like the Human Impact or others that they might find in other cities or others in Dallas that are also relationship-based?
Yeah, I think I didn't know what to call it. I love that you said they're relational based, because that's the type of like service that I really love. Like, and so I would say that I think that is kind of the type of serving that really opens your mind up to understanding others as much as you can, right? And so for me as a mom, what I would tell other moms is like to prioritize it, especially for your kids, because I think as we get older, we do start to see, other people and that live differently than us, right? But for the kids, I think it's so important to prioritize that type of relational serving and getting involved with organizations, just because it will open up your kids' minds. And I just think you're giving them a gift to be able to help and serve other people, right? And you think about, like I said, you think about it as like what we're doing, but by exposing your kids to that, you're giving them so much more than maybe the people who you're serving are getting, And so I just say, like, prioritize it 100% and don't be scared or afraid. And I mean, I think we're like, obviously as a Christian, I'm a Christian, like, God went out into the streets and washed people's feet, right? And so, like, when we really have that service mindset, I think we can step back out of ourselves and really kind of allow our families to really grow in that way. I I think it's awesome. Put it in your schedule. Like, we got 1,000 things going, but it's important.
I love that so much, to prioritize it, to schedule it.
Yeah.
And interesting that you talked about Jesus washing people's feet, because that's part of our ministry at the Human Impact. Our next feet washing is coming up on Maundy, Thursday, which is the day before Good Friday. And I'm taking my kids out of school to come wash
I
feet.
want to do it too.
Yeah, April is too.
Yeah.
So
okay.
everyone should just go ahead and calendar that opportunity right now.
Yeah.
Take your kids out of school and come experience what it's like to literally sit at someone's feet, to wash their feet.
I love that. I love that you said that, because now I'm like, yes. And that is the thing, is like, you can take your kids out of school for a day for this. This is so much bigger than like one day of school, right? Like, so to your point, it's just about like prioritizing and knowing that like this is so much bigger than a lot of the things that we have going.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I just thank you so much for sitting down with me today and having this conversation, for kicking us off on our Moms Change the World tour that we're doing here here in Dallas.
I love that. I love that. The name of that feels so empowering. I feel so bad. I wanted, next time we're going to have to sit down and have coffee so I can ask you all the questions, because when I'm talking here and I'm like, I want to ask her a question. So next time.
Exactly. Just more friend time.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for coming
Thank you
today.
for having me.